Silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of power. They never told you that, did they? They told you to talk it out, to explain yourself, to chase after people who walked away. They told you closure comes from conversations. But my friends, here's the truth. Sometimes the only closure you'll ever get is the one you give yourself in silence. And that silence, the right kind of silence, isn't weakness. It's a weapon. It's the kind of weapon that doesn't make noise when it strikes, but still leaves scars the other person will never forget. Stay with me, because today I'm about to show you how silence destroys the ones who betrayed you and why it makes them feel like nothing. If you've ever felt like you weren't heard, if you've ever begged for recognition, if you've ever shouted your truth and it fell on deaf ears, then you're in the right place. But before we dive deep, take a moment right now. Press that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join this community where every week we turn heartbreak into strength and betrayal into power. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Hey folks, imagine this. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a crowded theater and someone who betrayed you is on stage. They're putting on a show just for you. They want you to clap, to cry, to shout back at them. That reaction is the applause that keeps their act alive. But what happens when you don't play along? When you sit still in your seat, arms crossed, silent as stone? Suddenly, the actor forgets their lines. They stumble, they panic, because without your reaction, their performance collapses. That's what silence does in real life. It takes away the script they were counting on, and suddenly they're left with nothing but themselves, and the guilt they were trying so hard to avoid. People will tell you that silence is passive, that it's cowardly, that if you don't speak, you'll look weak. But that's a lie, my friends. Weakness is chasing someone who doesn't respect you. Weakness is explaining yourself to someone who already made up their mind. Strength? Real strength is sitting with your own emotions long enough to let silence speak for you. Strength is knowing that your absence will echo louder than your words ever could. As Marcus Aurelius once said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And what is silence if not the purest form of that? You're not fighting dirty. You're not stooping low. You're not wasting energy, you're simply refusing to play the game, and that refusal burns deeper than any insult you could throw at them. Think about it. Most people scream when they're hurt. They want to be understood. They want to prove their side, and that's why they stay trapped, because they keep feeding energy into a battle that was never worth fighting. But the few, the rare few who learn to stay silent, they walk away with dignity. Their silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, the one who betrayed them doesn't see victory. They see their own reflection. They see the mistake. They see the loss. It's funny, isn't it, how a simple lack of reply can shake someone to their core. They'll check their phone, refresh the screen, look for that one last text they thought was guaranteed, and when it doesn't come, panic sets in. Silence is like an empty stage that echoes louder than applause. The longer it stays empty, the more unbearable it feels for the one who expected a performance. My friends, this is what I want you to understand. Silence is not what happens when you run out of words. It's what happens when you finally realize you don't need them. It's choosing not to give your energy to someone who wasted it. It's walking away without slamming the door, because the absence itself is louder than the noise. And yes, it's not easy. Every part of you will want to break it, to send that one last message, to explain just one more time. But that's exactly why silence is powerful, because it requires self-control, because it's a discipline, because it's saying, without saying, I value my peace more than this battle. So from this moment, I want you to carry one phrase with you. Write it in the comments so the world knows what you stand for. Silent power. That's your reminder. That's your weapon. Silent power. Now, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and stay with me. Because in the next sections, I'm going to break down exactly how silence destroys those who betrayed you. and how you can use it not just as revenge, but as the beginning of your freedom. Number 1. Why they expect you to react. Betrayal doesn't end when they leave. It ends when you stop reacting. My friends, let that sink in for a moment. The wound itself isn't what feeds their power. It's your reaction. They thrive on it. They depend on it. Because every tear, every desperate message, every late-night why you send keeps them safe from guilt. That's the ugly truth most people won't admit. The one who betrayed you counts on your reaction to protect them from themselves. They don't just expect you to cry. They need you to cry. They don't just expect you to chase. They need you to chase. Why? Because your pain becomes their shield. Your reaction is what convinces them that they were worth all that emotion in the first place. Imagine this. You're standing in front of a locked door, and the person who betrayed you is on the other side. Every time you knock, every time you shout, every time you beg for them to listen, they don't feel guilt. They feel relief. Because as long as you're on the other side of that door making noise, they know you're still there. They know they still matter. Your cries become the music that drowns out their conscience. But what happens when you walk away from the door? When the knocking stops? When silence falls? Suddenly, they're left alone with themselves. And my friends, that silence terrifies them more than your anger ever could. Have you noticed how betrayal always comes with an expectation? They expect you to send that one last text. They expect you to demand an explanation. They expect you to lose yourself proving your worth. Why? Because they've seen the script before. They've seen others beg. They've seen others chase. And maybe you've done it yourself in the past. They count on that pattern. But here's the lie. They want you to believe that reacting makes you strong, that fighting for closure is dignity, that speaking your pain is healing. In reality, reacting is what keeps you trapped in their game. They think your reaction is guaranteed. They bank on it like an investor counting interest. They believe you'll fold the way you always did, and in that belief, they feel untouchable. But the moment you choose silence, the ground shifts beneath their feet. The game doesn't work anymore. It's like pulling the batteries out of a remote. The buttons they've been pushing suddenly do nothing. They can press harder, but nothing happens. And that absence, that refusal to react, leaves them facing a fear they never wanted to meet. Themselves. Folks, let me be real with you. It's not easy to stay silent. Every nerve in your body will scream for you to respond. Your chest will burn with words you want to throw at them. Your fingers will itch to type out that long message that you hope will make them finally understand. And you'll ask yourself, what if silence makes them think I don't care? What if silence makes me invisible? What if they never know what I truly felt? That's the fear. That's the trap. Because silence feels like surrender, when in reality it's strategy. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. Think of it like a storm. When a storm rages, it destroys everything in its path. But silence. Silence is the stillness after the storm, the eerie calm that unsettles the strongest of men. It's the quiet that makes them replay every choice, every word, every betrayal in their mind. They expected noise, they expected chaos, but you give them silence, and suddenly the battlefield disappears. There's no enemy to fight, no defense to build, no excuse to hide behind. There's only their conscience, and that's a battle they cannot win. As Seneca once said, "He who does not react conquers." Think about that. In every betrayal, the betrayer expects you to hand them the victory by reacting. But when you don't, when you hold back, when you disappear, you conquer without lifting a finger. That is the kind of power they cannot process. Why is it so difficult to embrace silence? Because we've been programmed since childhood to think talking fixes everything. Use your words, they told us. Explain yourself. Communicate. And yes, communication heals when both sides want healing. But when betrayal has already drawn the line, words become weapons turned against you. Every explanation you give becomes another tool in their hand to dismiss you, to twist your truth, to make you question yourself. And my friends, you don't owe that to anyone. They expect you to stay predictable. They expect the old version of you, the one who over-explained, the one who cried, the one who begged. But the day you don't react, the day you stay silent, you break their script. And when the script breaks, they lose the role they thought they controlled. Suddenly, the one who betrayed feels small. They feel powerless. They feel like nothing. But here's where it gets real powerful. Your silence isn't just for them. It's for you. Because when you stop reacting, you stop handing over your energy. You stop wasting your peace on someone who never deserved it. You stop fighting battles that were already lost. Silence becomes your sanctuary. It becomes the space where you remember your worth, rebuild your strength, and reclaim your dignity. And yes, they'll try to provoke you. They'll poke at you with little words, little jabs, little disappearances designed to make you flinch. But the moment you realize that you don't need to respond, that silence itself is your response. You rise above the game. That's the turning point. That's when you're no longer controlled. That's when they finally face the reality they ran from. They lost someone they could never replace. So here's your reminder, my friends. You don't owe them your tears, your explanations, or your rage. You owe yourself your peace, and silence is the doorway to that peace. The next time they expect you to react, give them nothing. Give them silence. Because nothing, when given with intention, is the most powerful gift and the most devastating punishment. Write this word in the comments to show yourself, to show the world around you, and to remind yourself every single day, unshaken. Because that's what you are when you choose silence over reaction. Unshaken, unmovable, untouchable. And stay with me, because what comes next will show you exactly why silence doesn't just end the game, it changes the entire battlefield. Number 2, the psychological shock of silence. The loudest scream is the one that never leaves your lips. My friends, let's get real. Most people think silence is nothing. They think it's empty. But silence isn't emptiness. It's an echo. It's a mirror. It's the thing that crawls into their mind when the noise is gone and forces them to face themselves. And that's exactly why it shakes them so deeply, because betrayal expects reaction, but silence delivers reflection. And reflection, my friends, is their worst nightmare. Have you ever noticed how the human brain panics when there are no answers? You text someone and they don't reply for hours. Suddenly, your mind starts spinning stories. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Are they ignoring me? That's the power of silence. It turns into a riddle that has no solution. And riddles torment the mind more than any harsh word ever could. Imagine this. You walk into a room and someone who always greeted you with warmth suddenly looks at you and says nothing. They don't frown, they don't explain, they don't show anger, they just stay quiet. That quietness, that absence of reaction, feels heavier than shouting. It's like being struck by a punch you never saw coming. Because when people don't know what you're thinking, they're forced to think harder. And in that thinking, guilt grows, fear grows, doubt grows. Silence becomes the soil where their conscience plants seeds they cannot uproot. Now, let's break this lie once and for all. They told you silence means weakness, that if you don't speak, you've lost your voice. Wrong. The truth? Silence is power precisely because it is misunderstood. People expect noise. They expect chaos. They expect you to hand them clarity on a silver platter. But when you withhold that, you starve their ego. You take away the fuel that keeps them comfortable, and suddenly they are left with nothing but the sound of their own thoughts, and those thoughts can be brutal. Folks, silence isn't just quiet, it's psychological warfare. Neuroscientists call it ambiguity aversion. The human brain hates uncertainty. It craves patterns. It wants answers. So when silence shows up, the brain starts scrambling. Every minute without your reaction becomes louder. Every hour becomes a wait. And every day that passes without you breaking that silence turns into a mirror they can't avoid. Think of silence as a ghost. It doesn't shout. It doesn't strike. It doesn't touch. But it haunts. It lingers in the background. It rattles doors at night. It creeps into their sleep and whispers, "You lost something, and you can't get it back." That's what makes silence terrifying. They can't fight it. They can't argue with it. They can't twist it into a narrative that favors them. It simply exists, and in its existence, it exposes everything they wanted to bury. Have you noticed how people who betray you often act so confident right after? They'll smile, post pictures, pretend they're living their best life. But underneath that performance is one expectation. They're waiting for your reaction. They want proof that you still care, proof that you're still hurt, proof that they still have a hold on you. But when you give them silence, the script falls apart. They don't get the proof. They don't get the validation. They don't get the satisfaction. And that absence is the wound they never prepared for. It's like this. Imagine a boxer stepping into the ring, throwing punch after punch, but the opponent never shows up. The boxer doesn't feel strong anymore. They feel foolish. That's what silence does. It doesn't throw a counterpunch. It doesn't fight back. It simply refuses to show up for the fight. And in that refusal, the betrayer collapses under the weight of their own swings. But let me be honest with you, it's hard. Silence isn't natural when you're hurting. Everything inside you will scream, say something, defend yourself, make them see. That's the battle, the internal storm. And yet, that's where silence reveals its beauty, because it forces you to rise above the storm. It teaches you that your worth is not in their recognition. It's in your ability to stay still when every bone in your body wants to break the silence. Think of it like this. Silence is a sword, but not the kind you swing. It's the kind you lay down in front of them without moving a muscle. They see it, they feel it, but they can't touch it. They know it's there, cutting deep, even though you never raise your hand. That's why it destroys more than shouting ever could. And here's the truth people don't want to admit. No one is prepared to be ignored by someone who once cared. That absence, it's brutal. Because when someone who always answered, always explained, always cared, suddenly stops, it creates a vacuum. And vacuums don't stay empty. They pull everything into them. The betrayer gets pulled into that silence. Their ego, their pride, their illusions, all sucked into the void you created. And in that void, they're forced to face what they never wanted to admit. They broke something they can't fix. Folks, this is why silence shakes them. It removes the stage. It removes the script. It removes the excuses. And once the noise is gone, the truth gets loud. They start to wonder, did I go too far? Did I lose them forever? Did I destroy something I can't replace? Those questions will eat at them long after your silence begins. It won't happen overnight. At first, they'll shrug it off. They'll laugh. They'll say, they'll be back. But then the silence stretches. A day becomes a week becomes a month. And suddenly, their confidence crumbles. They check their phone at night, scroll through old conversations, replay old words. And that's when silence turns into regret. Not because you screamed, not because you explained, but because you didn't. Remember this quote. Your silence may be misinterpreted, but it will never be forgotten. That's the heart of it. They may call you cold, they may call you heartless, but what they can't do is erase the echo your silence leaves behind. That echo will follow them, and long after you've moved on, it will whisper in their ear at the quietest moments. So here's what I want you to understand. Silence is not absence. It's presence of a different kind. It's the kind of presence that doesn't need validation. The kind of presence that speaks louder without words than others do with paragraphs. It's not you being weak, it's you being wise. But it won't just affect them, it will change you. Silence will test your strength, sharpen your discipline, and teach you the rarest art of all, emotional self-control. Because anyone can explode, anyone can scream. But the one who can stay calm, stay silent, and stay unmoved, that's the one who wins. So next time you're tempted to explain, next time you feel the urge to react, remember this: silence is the response they're not ready for. Silence is the battlefield they cannot win, and silence is the mirror that shows them who they really are. My friends, write this in the comments to show yourself, to show the world around you, and to remind your future self of the truth. Silence wins. Say it, claim it, own it. Silence wins. And stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to go even deeper. We'll expose the difference between silence that makes you a victim and silence that makes you untouchable. And once you see that difference, everything about how you carry yourself will change forever. Number 3. Passive silence versus strategic silence. Silence without intention is surrender. Silence with intention is power. My friends, let's clear the fog. Not all silence is created equal. You've seen both kinds in your own life. There's the silence that leaves you curled up in bed, staring at the ceiling, too broken to speak. And then there's the silence where you sit tall, chin lifted, watching them wonder why you're not reacting anymore. The first drains you, the second rebuilds you. One makes you a victim, the other makes you untouchable. People confuse these two all the time. They say, "I tried silence and it didn't work." But what they really mean is that they tried passive silence, the kind where you're quiet, but not by choice. It's silence filled with swallowed words, clenched fists, and nights of rehearsing conversations that never happen. Passive silence isn't peace, it's paralysis. It's when you shut your mouth but still fight the battle in your head. It doesn't free you, it locks you in a prison with your own thoughts. But strategic silence, that's different. That's when you stop talking not because you're afraid, but because you've decided the conversation isn't worth your breath. That's when your silence isn't empty. It's deliberate, it's sharp, it's a blade, not a bandage. Strategic silence isn't hiding, it's choosing. It says, without words, "This battle doesn't deserve me. This stage doesn't deserve my performance. This person doesn't deserve my energy." And that's where the shift happens. Think of it like a chessboard. Passive silence is when you freeze, unsure of your next move, letting the opponent take control. Strategic silence is when you step back, cross your arms and watch them sweat because you've stopped playing their game. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than an opponent who refuses to move on cue. Why is this so important? Because they will tell you silence is weakness. They'll whisper, "You're only quiet because you don't know what to say. You're only silent because you're scared." And that's the lie they feed themselves to keep control. But here's the truth. It takes far more strength to say nothing when everything inside you is begging to scream. Passive silence crumbles under pressure. Strategic silence holds firm. One is avoidance, the other is authority. Let me give you a picture. Imagine two storms. The first storm is chaotic. It rages, it crashes, it floods everything in its path. That's passive silence, messy, unresolved, dangerous. But the second storm, the one where the sky is still, the air heavy, no birds in sight, and everyone looks up, knowing something's coming. That's strategic silence. It doesn't move loudly, but its weight is felt by everyone. The stillness itself is the warning. The absence itself is the force. My friends, let's break it down further. Passive silence waits. It waits for them to notice. It waits for them to come back. It waits for someone else to take the first step. and waiting puts your power in their hands. But strategic silence doesn't wait. It acts. It says, "I'm not here anymore. I've withdrawn myself, not because I can't speak, but because I refuse to waste my words." Do you see the difference? One begs through quietness. The other commands through quietness. This is why Stoicism values silence so highly, because silence with intention is the clearest statement you'll ever make. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best answer to anger is silence." Not passive silence, the kind where you hide in fear, but strategic silence, the kind where you stand firm, calm, unbothered, letting your lack of response burn louder than rage ever could. And yes, it's difficult. It's difficult because silence feels unnatural when we're hurt. The human instinct is to explain, to defend, to make them see our side. You'll think, if I stay quiet, won't they think I'm weak? Won't they think I don't care? But here's the twist. When you explain, they stop listening. When you defend, they stop reflecting. When you talk, they twist your words to protect their ego. But when you stay strategically silent, they have no escape. Your silence becomes the mirror they can't smash, the reflection they can't distort. Think of it like a locked door again. Passive silence is when you stand behind it, whispering, waiting for them to knock. Strategic silence is when you lock it, walk away, and let them realize you're not on the other side anymore. One is fear, the other is freedom. Let me ask you this. How many times have you lost sleep, crafting the perfect words, hoping they'd finally understand? How many times did you send that long message, thinking it would open their eyes, only to be met with dismissal or worse, silence from them? Did it ever give you the closure you wanted? Rarely, right? That's because reaction feeds their game, explanation fuels their ego. But silence starves it. They expect you to give in. They expect you to fold. They expect the same version of you they always had, the one who explained, the one who begged, the one who tried. But when you choose strategic silence, you introduce them to someone new, someone they can't control, someone they can't read, someone who won't play the script anymore. And that shift, it rattles them to their core. Picture this. They throw out a sarcastic comment, waiting for you to explode. Instead, you smile and say nothing. They disappear for days, expecting you to chase. Instead, you carry on with your life. No response. They push every button, and you sit there, unbothered, giving them nothing but silence. That emptiness breaks them, not because you screamed, not because you fought, but because you didn't. That's the brutality of strategic silence. It doesn't fight the war. It ends the war. It doesn't bleed. It doesn't shout. But it leaves a mark no one forgets. Now, let's be honest. It will hurt you at first more than it hurts them. It'll feel unnatural. You'll want to break it. But here's the paradox. The longer you hold silence, the louder it becomes, the heavier it gets, and eventually, they'll feel it more than you ever did. They'll replay every conversation, every mistake, every action, looking for answers your silence refuses to give. My friends, here's the affirmation I want you to claim today. Strategic silence. Write it in the comments, not just as a phrase, but as a declaration. Say it to yourself. Show it to the world. My silence is not weakness. My silence is not fear. My silence is my strategy. Because when you choose silence with intention, you take back control. You stop dancing to their rhythm. You stop feeding their ego. You stop being their victim. And here's the curiosity I'll leave you with. What happens to manipulators when the strings they've been pulling no longer work? What happens when the puppet refuses to move? Stay with me, because next, we're going to expose exactly how silence ends their game and why they'll unravel the moment you stop playing. Number 4, silence as the end of the manipulator's game. Manipulation only works if you react. The day you stop reacting, the game collapses. My friends, that's the truth no one ever told you. Manipulators are like magicians. Their power doesn't come from real magic. It comes from distraction. They wave one hand, they twist their words, they poke at your wounds, and all the while they're pulling strings with the other hand. And what do they rely on more than anything else? Your reaction. They need you to flinch. They need you to argue. They need you to prove your worth, because the moment you react, they have control. Now picture this. Imagine a puppeteer pulling strings on a marionette. Every time they tug, the puppet dances, left, right, up, down. That's what manipulators do with emotions. A sarcastic comment here, a guilt trip there, a sudden cold shoulder just to watch you panic. They know which strings to pull because you've shown them before. You've taught them through your reactions where your weak spots are. But here's the beauty of silence. When you stop moving, when you stop reacting, the strings go slack. The puppeteer tugs, but nothing happens. They panic. Their power wasn't in the strings, it was in your willingness to dance. And now you've taken that away. Have you ever noticed how manipulators hate unpredictability? As long as you play the same role, they know exactly what to do. Say something cruel. You'll defend yourself. Pull away. You'll chase. Accuse you. You'll explain. But the second you go silent, the second you stop playing the role they expect, the whole act falls apart. Because silence is unpredictable. They can't decode it. They can't twist it. And what they can't predict, they can't control. This is why silence ends their game. It breaks the script. It leaves them stranded in the middle of their performance, waiting for a response that never comes. And the longer you stay silent, the more that silence turns into a mirror they didn't want to look into, a mirror that reflects not your weakness, but their manipulation. Let's break down the tactics. A manipulator will use guilt. After all I've done for you, they'll use gaslighting. You're overreacting, you're imagining things. They'll use shame. No one else would put up with you. And in the past, maybe those lines worked. Maybe they made you question yourself. Maybe they made you bend. But silence? Silence doesn't give them the satisfaction of an argument. Silence doesn't feed the fire. Silence doesn't even let them know if they hit a nerve. They throw their darts into the air, but there's no target anymore. And here's what happens next. At first, they'll push harder, they'll provoke more, they'll test you, they'll try new tricks, because manipulators can't survive without feedback. But as time goes on, frustration builds. The silence gnaws at them. They'll check their phone, waiting for the angry reply. They'll scroll back through old conversations, looking for clues. They'll try to bait you, and when you don't bite, the game turns against them. The manipulator, who once felt so in control, starts spiraling. Their own tactics start eating them alive. Let me give you a metaphor. Think of manipulation as a chess game. Every move they make is designed to corner you, to force your next move. But silence is flipping the board. You're not even playing anymore. And what's a chess master without an opponent? Just someone sitting in front of pieces that mean nothing. That's why silence devastates manipulators. It strips them of the only thing they had: your participation. And here's the hard truth. Manipulators don't care about truth. They don't care about resolving anything. They only care about advantage. As long as you're reacting, they have it. But when you go silent, you take it away. You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain. You don't even need to defend yourself. Your silence is enough. And my friends, that's the one language manipulators don't know how to translate. It's not easy, though, because silence feels like you're giving up. It feels like they're winning because you're not fighting back. That's the lie your pain will whisper to you. But think about it. When has arguing with a manipulator ever truly given you peace? When has defending yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you ever changed their mind? It doesn't. Because they're not looking for truth. They're looking for fuel, and silence is the day you cut off their supply. Here's the fascinating part. Psychology shows that when someone loses control, they experience what's called a loss of dominance response. That means their brain goes into panic mode, scrambling to regain control, and silence triggers that in manipulators. They expect to control the rhythm. They expect to know the dance. But when you don't play along, their mind spirals. Silence forces them into the one place they can't handle, uncertainty. And what does uncertainty do? It makes them question everything. Did I push too far? Did they stop caring? Did I lose them for good? Those questions start echoing louder and louder in their head. And the best part? You don't have to say a word. Your silence asked the question. Your silence planted the doubt. Your silence made them see what they never wanted to face. Let me give you another picture. Imagine a stage. The manipulator is the actor, you're the audience. As long as you clap, laugh, or cry, the show goes on. But the moment you cross your arms, sit still, and say nothing, the actor freezes. They don't know their lines anymore. They stumble. Because without your reaction, the play is meaningless. And that, my friends, is how silence ends the manipulator's game. But let's get real. Holding silence takes strength. It takes patience. It takes the discipline of someone who values peace over performance. It will feel heavy at first. You'll want to break it. You'll want to say something just to prove your side. But every time you resist, you grow stronger. Every time you hold the silence, you take back a little more power. Here's what I want you to remember. Silence is not about punishing them. It's about freeing you. Because the manipulator doesn't just control you with words. They control you with your need to respond. And when you break that need, you break the chains. So the next time someone tries to bait you, the next time they try to guilt you, the next time they throw their little hooks into the water, give them nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not explanation. Just silence. Watch how the game falls apart when you refuse to play. And when you feel tempted, when you feel like breaking, repeat this truth to yourself. Their power ends where my silence begins. Write this phrase in the comments right now. Game over. Because that's what silence says to the manipulator. It says, the game is finished. The stage is empty. The audience has left. You don't control me anymore. Show yourself. Show the world. Write it proudly. Game over. And stay with me, because next we're going to dive into something even deeper. We'll uncover how silence doesn't just end the manipulator's tricks. It transforms silence into its own language. A language of pure power. A language that doesn't need words, yet speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Number 5. Silence as a language of power. Words explain, but silence declares. My friends, let's talk about one of the greatest misconceptions of our time, that power is loud, that influence is noisy, that strength is proven in the volume of your voice. They want you to believe that shouting shows control, that arguing proves you care, that long explanations earn respect. But here's the truth. True power doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be understood. True power is quiet. It's steady. It's silence, delivered with intention, and it shakes people more than 1,000 words ever could. Think about this. Every word you speak gives them material. If you argue, they twist it. If you explain, they dismiss it. If you cry, they use it as proof that they still have an effect on you. But silence? Silence gives them nothing. No opening, no ammunition, no script to follow. And that nothing, paradoxically, is everything. It is the declaration that you will no longer be controlled. Imagine walking into a courtroom. One person is screaming, pointing fingers, throwing accusations. The other sits still, calm, saying nothing, only watching. Who do you think carries the weight in that room? not the one yelling. Power is rarely in noise, it's in presence. It's in the stillness that forces everyone else to adjust themselves. That's what silence does. It commands without demanding. It dominates without lifting a hand. Silence is a language, and like all languages, it communicates something profound. When you give silence after betrayal, it says, "You are no longer a priority. You no longer have access. You no longer have the right to my energy." And my friends, that statement hits harder than any insult you could craft. Let me give you a metaphor. Silence is like a locked door with no key. They can rattle it, knock on it, kick it, scream at it, but the door doesn't respond. And the longer it stays closed, the more desperate they become. At first, they'll laugh. Then they'll get angry. Then they'll grow desperate. Why? Because humans cannot tolerate being denied access to what they once took for granted, and silence is the purest form of denial. Have you ever seen how uncomfortable people get when a conversation suddenly stops? Someone says something awkward, and there's that moment of silence. That pause feels heavier than any insult. People shuffle in their seats, avoid eye contact, laugh nervously, anything to break the silence. That's because silence exposes. It exposes the weight of the moment. It exposes the truth no one wants to admit. And when you use silence intentionally, you're forcing the betrayer to sit in that exposure. Now here's the lie they'll tell you. If you don't say anything, they won't know how you feel. Wrong. They'll know. They'll know more than you think. Silence isn't absence, it's presence in another form. It's the presence of restraint. It's the presence of boundaries. It's the presence of self-respect. And trust me, they will feel it. They'll feel it in the pit of their stomach when they check their phone and there's no reply. They'll feel it when they try to provoke you and you remain calm. They'll feel it when they expect the old version of you, the reactive, predictable one, and instead they're met with someone who gives them nothing but silence. Let me tell you why this is so powerful. Because silence forces them to talk to themselves. Your absence becomes their inner dialogue. They start asking questions. Why didn't they respond? Did I push too far? Have they moved on? Do they not care anymore? Every unanswered question grows heavier with time, and eventually their own thoughts punish them more than you ever could. That's the brilliance of silence. It makes them their own tormentor. There's an old saying, "Silence is the speech of the wise." And in Stoicism, this couldn't be more true. To stay silent is not to be empty. It is to choose your words so carefully that sometimes the wisest word is none at all. Strategic silence is a statement of discipline. It says, "I am not controlled by impulse. I am not chained by your games. I choose peace over reaction." That choice is a language in itself. But let's not sugarcoat it. Silence is hard. It will test you. You'll sit there thinking, maybe I should just say one thing. Maybe I should just explain one more time. And you'll want to believe that one message, one call, one explanation will change everything. But that urge is not wisdom, it's fear. And silence is the antidote to that fear. Because silence says, I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to convince anyone of my worth. I already know it. Picture silence as a mirror. When you speak, the focus is on your words. But when you're silent, the mirror turns back on them. And in that mirror, they're forced to see their actions, their decisions, their betrayal. That reflection is sharp, it's brutal, and it's unforgettable. Words they can argue with. Silence they cannot. Here's where silence becomes even more powerful. It doesn't just affect them, it transforms you. Every time you stay silent when you want to scream, you strengthen your discipline. Every time you withhold your words, you reclaim your energy. Every time you let silence speak for you, you step further into your power. Silence becomes a training ground for self-mastery, and self-mastery, my friends, is the rarest kind of power there is. And what about them? They'll resist it. They'll hate it. They'll say things to provoke you. You've changed. You don't care anymore. You're cold. Let them, because silence as a language doesn't require translation. They'll feel the truth of it, whether they admit it or not. And the longer it continues, the clearer it becomes. You're no longer in their orbit. You're no longer playing their game. You've spoken your truth without saying a word. So let me ask you, what's louder, an argument that drags on for hours or silence that lasts for days? What's heavier, a message filled with rage or the absence of any reply at all? What's more unforgettable, a scream in the moment or the cold void that echoes long after the noise has faded? The answer is clear. Silence wins. My friends, this is the affirmation I want you to take with you today. Silence speaks. Write it in the comments right now. Show yourself. Show the world around you. Remind yourself that you don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to explain to be understood. You don't need to beg to be valued. Your silence speaks, and it speaks louder than anything else ever could. And stay with me, because in the next part, we'll go deeper into the inner battle. Why is silence so hard to hold? Why does it feel like breaking your own heart to stay quiet? And how do you turn that inner struggle into the very source of your strength? That's where we're headed next. Number 6. The inner battle of staying silent. Anyone can shout when they're angry. Few can stay silent and still win. My friends, let me tell you the truth. Silence looks easy from the outside, but inside, it's a war. It's not about pressing your lips together and saying nothing. It's about holding back the storm that rages inside you. It's about choosing restraint when every part of you is screaming for release. It's about keeping your hands steady when they want to type that one last text, that one last explanation, that one last "please understand me." That is why silence is not weakness, it's discipline. It's not cowardice, it's mastery. And that's why so few can truly hold it. Think of it like lifting a heavy weight. At first your muscles shake, your breath shortens, your body begs you to drop it. But the longer you hold, the stronger you become. Silence is the same. When betrayal hits you, when manipulation pokes at you, when disrespect tempts you to react, silence feels unbearable at first. Your chest tightens. Your mind burns with all the things you want to say. But if you hold it, if you stay still, you grow stronger with every second. Let's be honest, why is silence so hard? Because it feels like they're winning. It feels like you're letting them off the hook. Your thoughts will scream, "If I don't speak, they'll think I don't care. If I don't respond, they'll think they're right. If I don't defend myself, they'll never know the truth." And that's where the real test begins, because silence requires faith. Faith that you don't need their understanding, faith that your worth doesn't depend on their acknowledgement, faith that the truth doesn't need to be shouted to exist. Picture yourself holding a burning coal. Reacting is like throwing that coal at them. You might hit them, but you'll burn yourself first. Silence is dropping the coal, refusing to carry it, letting it cool on the ground while you walk away unharmed. That's the difference. Reacting gives them proof you're still playing. Silence shows them the game is over. But let's dive deeper. Why do we struggle so much with staying silent? Because from childhood, we were conditioned to speak. Use your words. Explain yourself. Say how you feel. And yes, in healthy situations, words heal. But with people who betrayed you, with manipulators, with those who twist your truth, words don't heal. They feed the fire, and silence becomes the only weapon they can't twist against you. Still, your mind will fight back. You'll replay conversations. You'll imagine confrontations where you finally win with the perfect speech. You'll lie awake crafting paragraphs you'll never send. That's the battlefield of silence. It's not on your tongue, it's in your head. And that's why silence requires more than just keeping quiet. It requires controlling the noise inside yourself. This is where Stoicism gives us the answer. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you choose silence, you're not just withholding words, you're mastering your mind. You're telling yourself, "I will not be a prisoner of their actions. I will not hand them control over my peace. My response belongs to me, not to them." Imagine a warrior standing on a battlefield. Arrows fly, swords clash, chaos surrounds him. Yet he doesn't swing wildly. He stands tall, calm, waiting for the right moment, or perhaps deciding not to swing at all. That stillness is not weakness, it's wisdom, because not every battle deserves to be fought. And silence is how you walk away with dignity from a fight that has no victory. But here's the paradox. You think silence is for them, but it's really for you. Silence teaches you how to sit with discomfort without letting it control you. It teaches you how to let go of the need to win arguments, the need to be right, the need to have the last word. It strips away illusions until all that's left is self-respect. And once you learn that lesson, silence stops being a burden. It becomes freedom. Still, I know what you're thinking. But won't they think I'm weak? Won't they think they got away with it? And here's my answer. Let them. Let them think whatever they want. Their opinion doesn't define you. Their assumptions don't chain you. Their lies don't erase your truth. Silence is not about what they think. It's about what you know. And what you know is this. The one who can hold silence holds the power. Have you noticed how silence always shifts the dynamic? At first, they'll poke harder. They'll throw little insults, little tests, waiting for your reaction. But when you give them nothing, something changes. Their energy falters, their confidence wavers. They start to question themselves, because silence is a mirror, and in that mirror they see not your weakness, but their own emptiness. And what about you? In the beginning, silence feels like fire burning in your throat. But the longer you hold it, the cooler it becomes. The longer you resist, the lighter you feel. And one day, you realize you no longer need to speak. You no longer need to prove. You no longer need them to understand. You've already won because you mastered the one person they could never control. You. Here's another metaphor for you. Imagine the ocean. When a storm hits, the surface rages, waves crash, winds howl. But deep below, the ocean is calm, untouched. Silence is choosing to live like the deep ocean. No matter how wild the storm on the surface, you remain steady underneath. That steadiness is unshakable power. So, my friends, what's the lesson here? Silence isn't just about withholding words. It's about mastering yourself. It's about proving to yourself that you don't need to beg, don't need to defend, don't need to argue. Your worth doesn't depend on noise, it depends on presence, and silence is the purest presence there is. Let me leave you with this. The hardest silence is always the first one. That first time you don't reply, don't explain, don't fight back, it feels impossible. But once you cross that line, once you taste the strength of holding your ground, it gets easier. And eventually, silence stops being a choice. It becomes who you are. Calm, grounded, unshakable. Write this in the comments right now. Show yourself, show the world, remind yourself daily, I choose calm. Because that's what silence really is. Calm in the middle of chaos, peace in the middle of provocation, power in the middle of betrayal. I choose calm. And stay with me, because next we're going to explore how silence isn't just the end of pain, it's the beginning of something far greater. Silence isn't only about what you take away from them, it's about what you rebuild inside yourself. That's where your rebirth begins. Number 7. Silence as rebirth. Every ending in silence is also the birthplace of a new beginning. My friends, let me tell you something most people will never understand. Silence isn't just a weapon against those who betrayed you. It's also the womb where a new version of you is born. Yes, silence destroys their games, their illusions, their control. But beyond that, silence creates space. And in that space, you begin again. Silence doesn't just end the story, it starts a new one. One where you are no longer chained to the past. One where your identity isn't built on betrayal, but on strength. Think about it. When you've been betrayed, your first instinct is to scream, to explain, to demand answers. You fill the air with noise, hoping that somehow words will fix what actions broke. But words don't fix betrayal, they only stretch it. Every argument, every explanation, every plea becomes another thread tying you to the very person who cut you down. Silence, on the other hand, is a knife. It severs the tie, it ends the noise, and in that severance, you begin to hear something you couldn't hear before, yourself. Imagine a forest after a wildfire. The trees are blackened, the ground is scorched, the air is heavy with ash. It looks like death. But give it time, give it silence, and something miraculous happens. New green shoots push through the soil. Life returns stronger, more resilient, nourished by the very ashes of what was destroyed. That's what silence does for you. It may feel empty at first. It may feel lonely, but it is in that emptiness where the seeds of your rebirth are planted. The lie they want you to believe is that silence equals defeat, that if you don't respond, you've lost, that if you don't speak, you've surrendered. But that's not true. Silence isn't the end. It's the reset. It's the moment you stop living to be understood and start living to understand yourself. It's the moment you stop running after someone else's validation and begin walking toward your own peace. And make no mistake, this rebirth isn't flashy. It doesn't announce itself. There's no applause, no stage, no recognition. It happens quietly when no one is watching. It happens in the late-night moments when you choose peace over text messages. It happens in the early mornings when you breathe deeply instead of rereading old conversations. It happens when you realize you're no longer waiting for their name to pop up on your phone. That's rebirth. And it is forged in silence. At first, silence will feel heavy. It will feel like punishment. You'll sit with your thoughts and feel like they're too loud, too painful, too much to bear. But the longer you sit, the quieter they become. The more you stay, the more you realize you're still here, you survived. And not only did you survive, you're growing. You're becoming someone they no longer have access to, someone they no longer deserve, someone they could never break again. This is what silence reveals. Your worth was never in their recognition. It was never in their apology. It was never in their ability to see your value. Your worth was always in you. Silence clears the noise long enough for you to finally see it, to finally feel it, to finally live it. And here's the powerful irony. The very silence they thought was their punishment for you becomes your salvation from them. They thought leaving you with emptiness would hurt you, but in that emptiness, you found yourself. They thought their absence would weaken you, but in your own absence from their games, you became unshakable. They thought you would be lost without their words, but in your silence, you found your voice, the kind of voice that doesn't need to be spoken to be heard. Let me give you another metaphor. Silence is like water, still, quiet, reflective. You can pour dirt into it, you can stir it, you can cloud it, but eventually it settles, and when it settles, it becomes clear again. That's what's happening to you. The noise, the chaos, the pain, they may cloud you for a while, but when you embrace silence, everything settles, the water clears, and you finally see yourself as you are, calm, powerful, whole, And let's not pretend this rebirth is easy. It's not. It hurts to let go of people you once built your world around. It hurts to realize they'll never give you the closure you craved. It hurts to accept that silence may be the only answer you'll ever get. But that hurt is part of the process. It's the breaking of the old so the new can emerge. It's the cracking of the shell so the life inside can breathe. And once it happens, once you step into this new self, you'll realize the pain was worth it. Because silence doesn't just change how they see you, it changes how you see you. Suddenly, you don't chase what doesn't serve you. You don't beg for what doesn't value you. You don't waste energy explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You move differently. You carry yourself with a quiet dignity that speaks louder than any argument ever could. You become selective with your presence, and in that selectiveness, you find freedom. So what's the real victory here? It's not that your silence made them feel regret, though it will. It's not that your absence shook them, though it did. The real victory is that you used silence to rebuild yourself. You used silence to reclaim your power. You used silence to create a version of yourself that doesn't beg, doesn't break, doesn't need. That's rebirth. And when they come back, and they will, you won't be there waiting, not because you're bitter, not because you hate them, but because you've grown beyond them, because silence turned you into someone who doesn't settle for crumbs anymore, because silence gave you back to yourself. And nothing is more powerful than that. So let me leave you with this. Your silence is not just the end of their control, it's the beginning of your transformation. It's not just the absence of words, it's the presence of self-respect. It's not just quiet, it's rebirth. My friends, I want you to claim this truth for yourself right now. Write one word in the comments: reborn. Show yourself, show the world, show everyone watching that you are no longer the same person you were when they betrayed you. You are reborn in silence, stronger, wiser, untouchable. And if this spoke to you today, do one more thing. Press the like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this message with someone who needs it. Because here, together, we are building a place where pain turns into power, silence turns into strength, and every ending becomes a new beginning. Stay with me, because your silence isn't the end of your story. It's the start of your greatest chapter yet.